Hey everybody, it's Connor from the Steel Lodge, and today we're looking at the Star Wars Force Unleashed games, the original one and the sequel too. I had a lot of fun playing these games when I was growing up. I never owned them, but I rented them from Blockbuster. My favorite thing about this game is just the ridiculous force powers you have, being able to blast like trees and have the bark just peel off them, or just snowballing people away from you with force push. It's a ton of fun. Now, both of these games are listed as unsupported for the Steam Deck, but they actually do both run on here. The ports for these ones aren't the best on PC, but luckily there are some fan fixes here that you can apply to the game to make it run a lot better. Starting off here, we're looking at the original Force Unleashed game. So for this one, when you start the game up, a launcher will pop up. So I recommend you change the layout of your controls and make your right trackpad a mouse, with clicking on it set to be a left mouse button click, so you can set up everything you want for the settings. There's not many graphic options here to speak of, but there is a resolution which you can set to 720p and enable the high graphics quality setting. Now, as far as performance is concerned here, this game's locked to 30 FPS on the PC unless you patch it, which I'll show you in a second, but I just wanted to look at some of the performance here without anything applied to the game. Now, generally speaking, this one hits 30 FPS very consistently overall, not using too much power, so you'll get fairly good battery life. One thing to note here in combat is there are some frame drops, and these mostly happen when you're hitting enemies. Now, in a lot of games, they have impact frames like God of War, the newest one. When you hit an enemy, things kind of pause for a second and then continue on through to make it feel weighty, the actual impact itself. But actually forcibly having your game drop frames to achieve this effect is not the best solution, and I don't know if that's exactly what's going on here. It might just be performance problems with this game in the base version here. Now, personally, I don't want to play this 30 FPS version for very long, so if you go to PC Gaming Wiki and then go to the Force Unleashed page for one or two, there's an FPS fixer that you can download. Download either one, and it has actually both executables for both games. And if you look at the folders for either game, there's a 40, 50, and 60 FPS fix, as well as an unlimited FPS fix. But for the purpose of this video, we're just going to use the 60 FPS fix for now. But you can check out the article to see what issues you might encounter if you use the unlimited FPS fix version. As far as installing the patched executable goes, it's really straightforward. Just take the 60 FPS version and drop it into your folder and overwrite the executable file there. And that should be it. Now with the patched executable in place, playing the game is a much more enjoyable experience on the Steam Deck. 60 FPS is pretty easy to attain here for this one, and the frame time is pretty consistent in general. Now, neither of these games are very long, but this is kind of before I got into Devil May Cry and Bayonetta. This is one of the first action hack and slash games I played, and I just loved Star Wars growing up so much that I was a big fan of this one. I always found the first game to be more fun though. I thought the story was better. And you start out at a weaker point than you do in number 2 with less, so when you unlock more mechanics and combos later on and force abilities, it feels more rewarding in my opinion. I'll let a little bit of gameplay run out for this one, but know that pre-rendered cutscenes and everything play out totally fine in this game, so there shouldn't be any concerns there. Really, the only graphical issue I saw was with some reflections in certain areas, but it wasn't too bad, so I just looked past it. Now we're moving along to Force Unleashed 2 without the patch at first, so playing at 30 FPS. For this one, I did notice some more frame time inconsistency for the base game here, so not the most ideal experience. Graphically though, this one does look quite a bit better than the first game. Basically every aspect of the game looks nicer in my opinion, and there are some nice additions here, like being able to cut the limbs off enemies. This one is pretty short though for the campaign, and when I originally played this game, I just found the cloning storyline to not be my favorite. Now, battery life-wise, the performance here is not as good as the first game, and if we look at the CPU cores, we can see some of them jump up to about 80% here and there, and I'm not sure if this game has built-in DRM on the Steam version. I heard the GOG one doesn't have DRM at all, so I'm not 100% sure if the DRM could be the thing causing one of these CPU threads to spike up here and there. Once again, patching this one to 60 FPS is the same process as the first game. Just go to the folder for Force Unleashed 2 this time, grab that 60 FPS EXE and drop it in the game, overwrite it, and you'll be good to go from there. Performance-wise with this patch installed, that's pretty good. You hit 60 FPS for the most part, but the graph is pretty jagged in comparison to the first game. There is a bit more stutter here than in the first game, but when I took this one on the go, I really didn't notice the stutter at all, and I had a good time playing it. Now, as far as battery life goes, I didn't really play with the TDP too much here. I actually have to hop on a flight very shortly, but the battery life here was around 2.5 hours if you were to play handheld, probably just a bit under that. So overall, a great experience on the go for both of these games and a handheld form factor. Now, one thing I want to note here is that for this game, the cutscenes run at an unlocked frame rate, regardless if you have the patched version or the unpatched version. So you might want to go to your Steam Deck settings and lock the frame rate down to 60 FPS, because otherwise your game's going to ramp up into the thousands of frames per second for no reason, and you're just going to use more battery life than you need to. Off the bat, the combat in The Force Unleashed 2 was definitely more fun than the first game, and the intro here is a lot more enjoyable. I didn't really like the tutorial in the first game, but the tutorial here is better woven in with the story and gets you into the action right away. The game's story is pretty short, but I found it just to be such a retread of the first game that I didn't enjoy it very much when I originally played it. That being said, though, the main reason people were playing these games was for the combat and insane force feats that you'll see, and this game definitely delivers on that. That covers it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching the video. Hopefully you like revisiting these games as much as I did. I have a lot of nostalgia for them. Next up, I'll be visiting Dead Space again, 1, 2, and 3 on the Steam Deck to see how they perform. It's really fun to see how these older releases perform on the Steam Deck with some fan patches and things like that. If you liked this video, consider giving me a thumbs up and checking out the channel and maybe subscribing for a lot more Steam Deck and gaming content in general. Other than that, I'll leave some gameplay running out here, and have a good day, everybody.